Hey guys, just to advise you that the sound issues we had in yesterday's episode of Grand Prix World might persist in this episode. I'm still recording it, and it only just came to my mind. We will, we will see. But I have ordered another replacement headset, so I've got two new mics, and hopefully, this problem won't persist past tomorrow. Thank you, Amazon Prime. So do bear with me. I've re-recorded this video like 4 times now, and I only have so much time in the day. I don't want to let you down and not be making other content, so thank you for your patience, and hopefully it doesn't ruin your enjoyment of the video too much. See you in a moment. Past me. What's up guys, hope you're having an awesome weekend so far. Happy Sunday to each and every one of you individually. I'm not going to go through you name by name. This is Crusader Kings 2, and I've been threatening you guys with this for a while, and since the launch of Stellaris is about 8 days away, and that's going to become our main playthrough alongside Grand Prix World, I thought I'd take my week off to get a few short-ish videos on Crusader Kings 2 out to you. I don't think it will develop into a proper playthrough unless there's demand for it. And this will be the longest video in the short series because there's a lot to explain about how the game works, but it's a good way to sort of give you an insight into how a lot of elements of Stellaris may function. We will be doing what we usually do, which is injecting a little bit of the personal into our playthrough, whether that's you guys being drip-fed into the squad in ZCOM or playing City Skylines on a topographical map of my hometown that some awesome bastard put together. We'll be doing the same thing here. We'll be modding this game to some extent. We've got all the DLC installed apart from Conclave, which apparently is rubbish. But the game itself is phenomenal. Most of the DLC is incredible, and it's so rich and deep that I think it's going to be particularly interesting to those of you who enjoy the more strategic games that we play here occasionally. Something to bear in mind before we begin. It's important to remember that this isn't really the sort of game that most players play to win outright. Some do, of course. But many, like myself, tend to play for the stories that develop. You've got it all, man. You've got infidelity, war, murder, intrigue, the whole shebang. It's incredibly rich, incredibly complex. Second thing to remember is you do not play as the nation state. That's very, very important. You can't just go around declaring war willy-nilly. You play as your dynasty. And that means a lot of politics comes into play because, you know, if you have more than one heir but only one can inherit, then they might try and kill each other. Your partner, whether you're playing as a female or a male character, your partner may cheat on you. You may find yourself raising another person's child without realising it, if you're playing as a guy, of course. It's got a lot of richness to it, and during episode 1, where I'm explaining a lot of this stuff, there will be a jump in time between episode 1 and episode 2, and the reason for that is that during the lifetime of our first ruler, things are going to be very, very slow. And I don't really want to bore you with that. I think it's better to get into around the time we expect our first ruler to die, and then that transition of power happens, and you have sort of a relationship score with everybody in your kingdom as well as all the people around you. There are many, many tiers of power. Think of it like a wedding cake, and I think it's got the potential to be particularly interesting. So will there be a few videos on this week, I hope. I hope it's of interest to you in the end, and all I ask is you give it a try. So if episode 1 doesn't really work for you, just remember that this is going to be the driest and dullest of the episodes if you're not into going into minute detail, but I think it's important to get some understanding of how the game works. Right, I'm going to customise the balls out of this game, and we will go from there, so I'll see you in a minute. We will be starting in the early Middle Ages because that is when most of the modern nation states haven't really formed. There's a lot of fracturing going on. And we are going to custom the game. Right, now, this is where things get interesting. Because obviously we're trying to add the personal touch, right? And at the moment, I live somewhere around here. We're not going to play here, because if we played within the borders of Saxony, we would have a liege lord. That kind of restricts our play style a little bit. It's also a bit of a clusterfuck with lots of different small holdings and kingdoms surrounding us, and while that's kind of good, it does make the play interesting. I think it will also affect how quickly we can learn certain elements of the game. It might put a bit too much pressure on early. You will tell from my accent, potentially, if you are from the island, that myself, Joe, Grant, you know, the guys you tend to see on the channel quite frequently, we all grew up here in Lancaster. And we won't be playing here either, for the same reason. We have a liege lord in the King of Northumbria, and it kind of restricts what we can do. So let's roll it back one further. My dad is from here, Fife. That won't be happening either. Same reason. There is a King of Pictland, and it causes us unnecessary restriction, and I think it just takes away a bit of the spice. You've got the internal politics of the Kingdom of Pictland, but for such a short playthrough, potentially, I think it's better if we don't have a tier of power above us. Now, those of you who pay attention will know that I have been doing lots of research on various different things, trying to put together some videos that review stuff in real life. It's just something I'm trying to see if I can get it to work. The microphone I bought that I can't work, there's a video for that. I'm redoing it because I don't know if the problems I'm having are because I'm an idiot, so I want to make sure it's a fair review and that you can trust what I tell you. But one of the things I have been reviewing is all these genealogy services, the genetic testing companies. Now, if you're from Europe, chances are it's not going to tell you anything particularly interesting. You're kind of, I suppose, helping build a reference database, particularly for the American market, who perhaps don't really know their family's history quite so well. Because chances are, statistically speaking, if you live in any one area of Europe and all four of your grandparents are from the same town as you, then there's an incredibly high chance that your family hasn't moved for thousands of years. So, you know, that's just the way it tends to fall. Of course, it's not a blanket cover-all rule, but how it's been explained to me is that's generally how it works. Now I'm going to flash the results up on screen for you in a moment. The first slide will be just the basic results from one of the companies. I'm not going to bore you to death with all the details. And the second slide will be, think of it as sort of like a line origin. So, boom. There you go. Right. So what you will have seen in that is that my dad's line, I mean, obviously everyone comes out of Africa, but my dad's line is considered to be from here. So at some point around this time in history, my dad's dad, many times back, will have been somewhere around here originally. And what we know is between there and Fife, there were some steps. Some people in Glasgow moved into Fife and via Lothian, but the people who came from Norway actually came via the Isles, and that enables us to tweak history a little bit. I mean, the family history, I suppose, because really we should be playing over here, but we're not going to do that because playing as the pagan Norse is it's a very specific kind of play style. It's very, very fun, but it just pressures you to constantly raid, and you can't really build a nation. Whereas playing as the Isles is particularly interesting because you see here the Kingdom of Dalriata, and Dalriata is a Gallic kingdom, so in the game it's classified as Irish, which basically is true, I suppose. But the Gaels are an ethnic group found in the Isles, west of Scotland, Highlands, and of course Ireland. And that puts us in a particularly good position, right? Because we are independent. The King of Pictland obviously wants this territory, and eventually the Picts and the Gaels will merge into what we call today the Scots, I suppose, along with the Bretons, of course. And what tended to happen in real history is that all this territory eventually ended up very much Gaelicized. There's some people who will tell you that places like Fife and Strathclyde and Lothian never had any Gaelic speakers or any Gaelic influence. That isn't true, but it's very much true that sort of, particularly Lothian and Dunbar and Teviotdale, you were more likely to find speakers of Scots or Old English than Gaels for the majority of the time, but it was a Gaelic kingdom. We know that Fife, Serkin, Strathclyde were very much Gaelicised, and so the original border of Scotland would have ended somewhere around here. Lothian was, that's where Edinburgh is, by the way, was technically part of what went on to become England for quite some time. So the history is particularly interesting, and the great thing about this game is that you can start at a fixed point in history and then make it up as you go along, and your decisions affect things. So we are surrounded by the Picts, the Welsh in Strathclyde, and the Anglo-Saxons in Northumbria. Some of you are going to be saying this isn't 100% accurate. You are correct. You are correct. There's no other way of putting it, really. Eventually, particularly the north of England got a lot of Norse migration, as well as this coast of Ireland. But this is before the Viking Age, of course, that we're playing at the moment. Also, there is some evidence, not overwhelming, that you're more likely to have to be ethnically Saxon, if that's the correct term, which probably isn't, but you know what I'm trying to say. Your genetic heritage is more likely to be found in the north of Germany if you are from this area, and particularly along the east side of the island. And the further west you go, the more you're likely to be descended from either up here, the Norse, or native Britons, so the native inhabitants of the island, or the first inhabitants of the island. Particularly if you're Cornish or Welsh. Welsh has some Norman influence, but for the most part, the Welsh, and two of which have no particular love for us at this point in time. And we back onto the Gaelic homeland, and the Gaelic homeland of Ireland is very, very, very divided, which means we can expand our territory without pissing off any particularly big powers. I mean, we're never going to be able to stand up to the Picts, that's just a fact. I'm going to be customizing the game, and I'm going to be doing that in a way to make things more interesting, maybe a little bit more difficult. It won't be a vanilla start, that's for sure, so we'll gain some advantage in certain areas and some disadvantages in other areas. What I'm going to do is set us up with a Norse wife to make up for cheating and not starting where, if we were being super serious about this, we would be starting. That puts us in an interesting position because there's a chance our wife could convert us, or that our children will end up ethnically Norse, and that means they're more likely to be rejected by the court and the people we rule over. We will also be starting with a slightly increased treasury, and that is only for the benefit of the playthrough, because particularly with having a Norse wife, the chances are the Picts are going to go for us straight away, and we wouldn't win that fight. It just would not happen. And the one way to come around that is to swear fealty to the King of the Picts and merge our kingdom into Pictland and form Pictland, or it would probably be large enough to trigger the forming of Scotland, actually. But that would remove our independence straight away, and I don't think that would make for a particularly interesting playthrough. So we're going to try and remain independent, and that means boosting our treasury a little bit at the start, so we've got cash for mercenaries, basically. Other than that, we will not be modding in any other particularly interesting way, and hopefully you guys find this interesting. So I'm going to create a custom ruler. No, not for there, for here. Okay, I'm not going to bore you doing all this on camera. I'm just going to create someone and then we'll see what I've made and then we'll go from there. Okay, that's the closest approximation I can come to. The interesting thing is this game does do genetics, so aside from your ethnicity that you can pass on to your kids, you can pass on physical traits as well as characteristics and personal traits, and that's where things get particularly interesting. I'll knock up a coat of arms and then we'll go from there. And as you can tell, much like a Blue Peter presenter, here's one I prepared earlier. I don't really know much about heraldry. Something to remember since we're doing consumer advice apparently now. if you go to a company and you type your name in and they tell you this is your coat of arms, or this is your Irish clan, or this is your Scottish clan, there's a very, very high chance that it's bollocks and you're wasting your money. Heraldry wasn't assigned to families, it was assigned to people for the most part, and most families don't have a coat of arms in reality. It's just not done, so you can save your money. Same with the clan system. The clans, particularly up in the Gaelic Highlands, they didn't really keep written records, and it's a very general thing to say everybody with this surname was a sept of this clan. That's not how it worked in reality at all. According to the internet, my family should be a member of Clan Gun. I've never identified as a member of a clan, and the reason for that is that I can find absolutely no evidence for any connection to that clan at all. Their lands are somewhere over here, apparently. I don't do much research on the clan system, but somewhere in what is currently Pictland, I can find no evidence of my family ever living there, and I've gone back as far as the early 1400s, when we were around here-ish, on the Gaelic coast. So there is literally no evidence for this connection, and they will happily take your money, but just bear in mind that you're not really getting anything for your money. It's the same with the genetic testing. The reason I'm testing it is to try and save some people some money, because you'll have seen from my results that genetically I'm supposed to be 44% Norwegian. That really isn't true. There's been no one at all in my family who is even remotely Norwegian since the 1400s. What it's doing, and bear in mind it is a very stupid thing to say, to get your results and say, I am 10% Italian. You're not. You are not. What it's saying is, we've taken part of your genome, not the entire genome, part of it, and we have looked at each gene, and we have cross-checked it against research, and we've tried to find where that gene is considered to have originated. So 44% of the genes they looked at, not 44% of all my genes, are considered to be Norse. And it's generally reliable. So all that tells me is that I had probably a direct ancestor, almost certainly a direct ancestor from Norway, and that we have for years been interbreeding with other people who carry similar genes. And that's pretty believable, right? Because if you all migrated over from Norway to the Isles, then chances are there was a lot of intermarriage going on, right? So those genes don't really get bred out. But it doesn't change anything about you and who you are. So if you ever do get a test and you're not happy with the result for any reason, just remember it's not really... Think of it as a bit of fun, really. There is some science behind it, but it is not a true reflection of your ethnicity. It's just a reflection of the genes they bother to look at. It's kind of like reading a book, or reading someone's CV through a pasta strainer. You only see the letters that are underneath the holes in the pasta strainer. You don't get the full picture. And that's the best way I can describe it to you. Right, no more boring. We are 0. MacZero. Our education, we will be you see, this is the mod. It's removing all the cost from picking these choices, but I'm purposely not picking something overpowered. We'll be Underhanded Rogue, which gives us a boost to diplomacy, but reduces our ability to lead the troops. Traits. Legitimized Bastard, because I am. Getting a bit personal here now. Handsome YouTube Bastard. Hedonist, I think that's fair to say. I'm the guy who enjoys a good microwave cheeseburger. Yeah, gardener. I used to have a garden in Berlin. There you go, there's a surprising fact. I used to have a vegetable garden. You might not have expected that, but it is true. Gregarious, yeah, why not? And sympathy for pagans. Okay, so that's us set up there. I'm going to start the game and make sure I've spelled the name correctly. And then I'm going to do some jiggery pokery to sort out the Norse wife thing, and then we will begin the game. We'll take a quick look at how the state is set up at the moment, and then I'll call it an episode, and in episode 2 we will actually get down to the business of running the kingdom. See you in a moment. So before we've even got started, you can see that the Picts have already, to the perverted bastard Zero, they've already declared war on us, and that's exactly why we will be modifying our cash flow. We won't be touching any further beyond that, you have my word. I'm going to finish setting up the game, and then we will defend this war in the next episode. Instead, what I'll be doing is taking time to talk you through some of the systems before I get started. So, see you in a moment. So the first thing we're going to do is choose an ambition, which is to get married. And then we're going to marry one of the Norse women we have moved into our court. There's a reason for that. Partly because, of course, we cheated, and we should be playing as a Norse kingdom if we were doing this properly, but we're not. But we are punished for doing this, because you'll see we take a significant penalty to our prestige, minus 200, which means people will not be taking us seriously. Yeah, we will tax for 10 gold. Now, what we can also do to boost our chances of getting an heir early is take some concubines, which is women other than your wife that you sleep with, and the children are eligible to inherit. We'll probably do that in the next episode, I guess. But moving on, we have a court. And the reason that we've made life difficult for ourselves is that we are simulating the Norse influence on the Gaelic culture. So there are now a bunch of Norse men and women in our court, as well as the native Gaels. And being married to one means there's a chance she might convert me religiously or ethnically, or our children could be ethnically Norse, which puts them in the position of ruling over a different ethnicity, and that causes you no end of problems. It also means these people are going to hate us even more for having an ethnically mixed court, and it also means that whether we become a Norse or a Gaelic kingdom in the long run is affected, because it damages the opinion of the Gaels in the court. But these people also have to have wives of their own. They won't marry unless you tell them, and these people take jobs in your court, you know, whether that's the Chancellor or the Marshal or one of your commanders. And if you don't replace them with the next generation, then you run out of staff and you have no commanders, or you have really poor commanders, so you have to spend a lot of time marrying people off in ways that make sense. The problem is that people can become quite powerful within your kingdom if you marry them to the wrong people. What you'd want to avoid, for example, is allowing, like, you know, the leader of this kingdom to marry the only daughter of the leader of this kingdom, because when he dies, because he's old, then his daughter inherits, and because she's married to this dude, and women are considered property, and what is theirs becomes property of their husband, shame on you, history, you end up with these three territories being united under one ruler, and that gives him a significant power base to dominate the other people on the island. And if you're the High King of the island, and your territory is, say, Connacht, you will find that suddenly he can stand up to you and challenge you, and you really don't want that. The other thing, of course, is putting people in the right positions. Everybody has character traits. If we take our wife as an example, she's just, trusting, brave, and lustful. Lustful gives her a fertility boost, but it does mean that she might cheat on us. She's a lot more likely to cheat on us, and you don't always discover that she's been unfaithful. And that means you can accidentally break your bloodline without realising it. The game won't end, but you'll be playing as a different bloodline. The game will end, however, if we die without any heir. So it's about maintaining your family line and keeping yourself in power, which means trying to discover plots against you. And the plot system is particularly deep. The relationships you have with people are particularly deep. You'll see there's a number here that tells you how people view you. So green numbers are good, they go up to 100, and obviously she's our wife, so she does like us quite a bit, but, you know, for a wife, 43 is pretty shit, you would think. the more people dislike you, the more likely they are to plot and scheme against you. People will also plot to assassinate each other. It's not just you this affects. They might go after your Chancellor if he owns lands that they want and they benefit from his death. So you have to be constantly vigilant. You have to constantly monitor people's relationships and the balance of power within your kingdom, as well as within your court, as well as within the wider world. That means forging alliances through marriage and coalitions and all kinds of things, and it's going to become particularly interesting for us as time goes on. We will call this an episode after we've set up our council and picked a character focus, and then I will see you for episode 2 when we fight these damn Picts. Okay, we're back. Now, something we need to look at is what will eventually become England, potentially. It may never unify in our playthrough. This doesn't strictly stick to history. From the point you start the game, anything can happen. Wales, obviously, is not particularly unified. Cornwall is as unified as it ever was. God love you, Cornwall. I've got a lot of affection for the Cornish. What you have is, in Kent, it says Anglo-Saxon, but really it's the Jutes from up here. And then the... and then, of course, you have the Saxons, who are from, particularly around Holstein and Lübeck, but Schleswig as well, and sort of the northern part of Germany. And land of the West Saxons, land of the South Saxons, land of the East Saxons are obviously dead giveaways that it's predominantly Saxon culture in this area. The big players are the Petty Kingdom of Mercia and the Petty Kingdom of Northumbria. And it's most likely that one of these two will become powerful enough to form the Kingdom of England. Whether they ever unify the whole thing, who knows. Northumbria tend to have a tendency to try and move up into Pictland, and it might be, particularly because as the Gaelic presence on the British mainland, the mainland, it is possible to form Scotland quite quickly by us bowing down to the king of the Picts. It happened the other way round, actually. What tended to happen was the Gaels were invited into the Pictish court and eventually took over. But the unity between the Picts and the Gaels did form what we now know as Scotland, and we could help that happen. This is what he's trying to do now, basically. He's trying to stake his claim, which he does have. Let's go over claims really quick. So these are our titles. Here would be any claims that we have. We don't have any. And diplomatic standings with different kingdoms. If we look at this dude, he's fighting a de jure war over Argyll. And what that means is that de jure, a de jure claim means that Argyll is considered by most parties to be part of something else. And as the title holder of that something else, whether that's a duchy or a kingdom, he has some casus belli to attack us to claim that territory back. Generally, most claims that you fight will either be forged claims, which we're going to be doing a lot of, or they're going to be people who have a claim on a territory through descent. And you have to sort of watch out for that, really, particularly within your own court. There are people in our court who have a claim on this territory, and they will not be happy that we run it and they do not. And that's where the internal politics start to get interesting, because we have a council, and the council does councilly things. They do special tasks for you, and they oversee different areas of your government. They boost your own rulership abilities. So you're torn between having people with a good relevant skill and putting in people who dislike you so they learn to like you, and not giving too much power to people who may turn against you. So, for example, if we pick a marshal, what we can do is take this guy who's the best qualified, or we take this guy who doesn't like us, give him that position, and suddenly he'll like us. And that's fine, there's only like a 1 point difference between them, but it can come around that you end up having to choose between someone who's completely unqualified, but it's the only position that they're eligible for. And you have to choose, well, are they powerful enough to cause me a problem? If they are, maybe it's a good idea to placate them with this title, or does giving them the title give them some advantage that I haven't anticipated? Everyone has education and different traits and different skills. So obviously the marshal, we want someone who has martial skill, who is capable of leading troops. This guy is a skilled tactician. He's slothful though, gluttonous, wrath, and just, and these traits really do play out in the game. Fergus, however, is wrath, brave, and honest, and I think he represents a better option for us, even though he's 1 point less skilled overall. The fact that he's honest and brave is probably going to work to our favour. But he has a claim on our kingdom. He's got a claim on Dalriasha. So we will put this guy in charge, and we will use him to train troops. Our Chancellor, is he the best guy for the gig? Yes, he is, so we'll keep him in position. He will fabricate a claim on Ulster, and I'll explain why in a moment. Steward runs the economy and collects the taxes. Constantine seems to be the best guy for that job. He's a craven, humble, trusting, and kind fortune builder. Seems pretty well suited to that job, so he can have it, sure. He can oversee construction. Our spy master is rubbish, but we will take him anyway. And we're going to send him to study technology. The only place we can get technology at this stage of the game and history is in the Byzantine Empire, but they really do not like you sending people there. He can be caught, he can be killed, imprisoned, blinded even. All kinds of nasty things can happen, so I'm not going to send him to Byzantium because that feels a bit cheeky, and we're going to send him instead to Thrace. And not only does that give us some eyes in the area, so we get to learn a little bit about the local politics, even though we're far too far away to really affect them in any way. But also he or she will study technology wherever we send them, and send his findings back to us, which helps us develop our kingdom. Finally, court chaplain, which is obviously religious duties, and there's only one man for the job, as lustful and gluttonous and wrath and greedy as he is. And I'm going to send him to Rome to improve our relationships with Chief Popey McPoperson, to make sure he doesn't hate us. Then we've got minor titles, and these are just as important. Don't be fooled by the name minor title. For example, cupbearer is someone who tries your drinks before you do, to make sure no one's poisoning you. If you put someone here who is deceitful or, you know, has a severe problem with you, chances are they're not going to do their job to the best of their ability, and you will end up being poisoned to death. So it's always good to have someone honest. I'm going to pick Fergus because he may dislike us, but he is honest. And ideally you want a combination of honest and just, I think. But we're not blessed with that good fortune. High Almoner. It's very much a ceremonial duty. Someone with good learning will be good for that, so I'm going to take this dude. Designated regent is someone who will rule if you become incapable for any reason. And I'm going to set this Irish girl, 16-year-old, because she is the best ruler we have available. I'm going to take her as a concubine as well, I think, actually. That skill will go to waste being married to somebody else. Master of the Horse, important role. We'll give that to our Marshal. A Master of the Hunt, we will give to someone slightly less qualified who maybe is not big on us at the moment. We will give it to this dude. Okay, so that's our roles given out. What else are we going to do? We're going to marry some people off to make sure things are working in our favour. So I'm going to present some debutantes and invite some nobles and 1 or 2 holy men just to expand our court a little bit, and then we're going to start marrying people off. I'm going to take some more concubines first. It makes sense to do that. It doesn't make you many friends within the church or the clergy, but it does increase your chances of having an heir early by about 400%, and once we've got a child we can start getting rid of the concubines and start leading a more honest life. I'm just going to take all of these. Yeah, Done. Okay, so we are a dirty, dirty sex pervert, but we're in such a fragile and delicate position, I think it makes sense. Right, now let's get on with the business of marrying people off. Constantine is still relatively young, but has no children, and he's a very skilled steward, so we want to find someone within our court or nearby who is similar age, who is very capable when it comes to stewardship. And there is a Greek courtier who is maybe prepared to marry him, so let's set that. Okay. Moving back to the court. This dude is incredibly old, but that doesn't preclude him from love. I'm going to marry him to this 40-year-old woman, so at least they're not going to produce any unhinged children. Now, they don't have to accept, but people within your own court will marry whoever you tell them. So if we marry someone to someone within our court, then that will just be a thing that happens. There's an Italian courtier here who we can marry to the guy with the Hulk Hogan moustache. Those Gaelic classes I took are maybe going to pay for themselves at some point, because there's going to be some names coming up and words and phrases, and I'm going to do my best not to butcher them. Okay, he's lowborn, which makes things interesting. He's a martial sort, and that's good, because there's a Norse girl in our court who is also of the martial sort. So that's that done. And now we're down to this guy. Who can he marry? What's his skill really? Nah. Yeah, we'll go for you. And obviously we want them to have kids and start building their own dynasties, but not dynasties that ever fuck with ours. This guy really doesn't like us, so maybe marrying him to someone will do us a favour. He's a diplomat, and so she. Wow, she's incredible. She's a talented girl. Yeah, we'll marry those. And now we're going to be a bit less picky. Steward, yeah. Now obviously there's no guarantee that we're going to come out of this with, you know, children particularly skilled in one area or another, but it does improve your chances because they tend to educate their own children, and that means they're more likely to draw on their parents' experience in one thing or another. We'll bring this Greek girl over for this dude. There's a lot of favouritism in early Middle Ages Ireland apparently for the Hulk Hogan moustache, and I have to say I am in favour of that. And yeah, you can marry this Frankish girl. Okay, one more bit of modding, and we will go from there. I'm going to boost our coffers to the bare minimum amount required to hire 1 unit of mercenaries, just so we can survive this invasion, because this isn't going to be much of a playthrough if we're bitched to death immediately, and I've made it hard for myself in a way that almost guaranteed that this would happen. And I think it will make for an interesting playthrough, but we just have to get into a position where we have some kind of lasting peace treaty in place with the Picts. That means they can't attack us for 10-20 years or so. On that note, I hope the weekend's being really, really super kind to you. I hope you're not too bummed out about it being Monday tomorrow, and hopefully you're interested in this playthrough. I will do my best not to bore you or waffle on too much or make the episodes too long. Mainly for the life of our first ruler, I'm going to blitz through it, mostly off camera, and just jump in and out when interesting things happen, and then it's around the time of the first succession that things get particularly interesting, because the nature of our court will have changed a little bit, and depending on how well we raise our child, the transfer of power can get interesting, let's put it that way. I've been Zero, you've been awesome, and I will see you very, very, very soon indeed. Take care.